Well, welcome everybody to Inspired Conversations podcast show. I am your host, Kim Evans, and I have a very lovely guest, a very special guest today, Mr. Rodney Alamo Brown. I am so excited. He is a community advocate, Richmond's finest, leader, and the founder of Soulful Sunday. For those of you who do not know who I am Kim Evans. I am the owner of Two Gorgeous Integrated Health and Wellness Spa of 26 years. I'm also a beauty, business, and holistic wellness coach. So welcome everybody to the podcast show. But before I start the show, I like to always open it up. And Rodney, I hope that's okay with you. I want to start with a quick little prayer. Is that all right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So everyone, I just want to open it up. I want to always invite the Holy One into my show. So I'm going to open this up and I'm going to say, God, I just want you to hey, full reign. We are in for a dynamic, wonderful conversation this evening. And I want to give you praise, the Holy One. And I want everyone who's listening to this podcast show to be inspired, to be illuminated, to be transformed, to be motivated, that you can take a gem of something of some sort and that you can just let that just blossom in your spirit and your soul, and you can make a change, or you can reach back to somebody else in the community. So I want to bless everyone as far as the east, as far as the west, as far as the south, as far as the north, and thank our guest today for giving him a voice to speak, Lord, and lift him up in all the continents around the globe. And God, thank you for being amazing. And thank you for giving me this voice, because without you, I'm nothing. Thank you, Lord. And let's have a great show. Mr. Rodney Alamo Brown. Man, I'm so excited for you to be here on the show. Thank you.
Take it away. Thank you, Sister Kim, for bestowing this pleasure and honor upon me to even be within your presence on this show. I'm so delighted to be here this evening. When you presented the reservation for me to do it, of course, I couldn't turn it down. Of course, we were supposed to have did it a long time ago, but of course, our schedules conflicted. But now that I've taken a lot of stuff off the table, I'm definitely joyful to be here with you this evening in your presence.
Well, I am so glad and honored, double honored for you to have said yes and to be here, because we are going to have an amazing show. And so the topic of the show today is the process of leadership and community engagement. And I love, Rodney, when you said about when I is replaced with we, even illness becomes wellness. So let's go ahead and begin. But before we do that, and we come back to that, can I give your accolades, man? Can I talk a little bit about you? Can we just let the people know your background, what you've done? Richmond finest. Can I just go there a little bit?
Well, only if you do the condensed version. No, I'm just joking. Whatever floats your boat, Mr. Kim.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. You're all right, you guys. We're gonna go ahead on and do this. So I just want to give a little bit of information about Rodney. So let me just go here. Excellent start with leaders of good, strong character who engage in the entire process of leadership. And the first process is being a person of honorable character. Rodney Alamo Brown understood his assignments while seeing the need of outreach, education, and community engagement to low-income African American residents. I'm so excited, man. You know, if no one gives you enough accolades, we're gonna give you some accolades today. I think that more of our Black men, African American men, needs their accolades. So I'm gonna give them to you. At the sweet age of 17, Brown was the first Richmond, California native to own a rap record label company and record a rap song on a 33.5 vinyl. Most young people wouldn't even know what that is today. In 1984, he established the Globe Town Records. In 1986, the label released a song entitled The Task Force. But more importantly, it sold more than 40,000 copies. See, people don't know that. Brown began a career as a professional barber in 1986 in Richmond, California. People didn't know that. Rodney used to be a barber, y'all. Not only a record producer, but he was a barber. Done over more than 89,000 haircuts alone in Hawaii and in Richmond, respectively. And now he's retired. 1987, Brown became a professional baseball scout for the Tampa Bay Rays, as well as the Atlanta Braves in 1989. But this is when the pivotal point came right here. Y'all listen to this. In 1998, Brown was the very instrumental in getting Richmond's finest, best R&B group, the Sons of Funk, their recording deal with No Limits Records. Oh man, Rodney, you know, I got to take you back. Oh God, owned and operated by the former Richmond, California resident, Master P. Okay, I got to ring my bell on that one. I got to ring my bell on that one. You were the group's road manager. You set up 33 city national tours throughout the United States. Okay, we got to bring this down. You got so much, man. While residing in Hawaii, then you get to Hawaii. Brown became one of Hawaii's biggest promoters. Through his no longer active in the entertainment business, his production of the list of artists includes. Okay, y'all. Let me just give you a little bit. Let me give you a little bit of here. Let me get a little bit. Music Soul Child, Erykah Badu, Crime Mob, Young L.A., Justin Bieber, Lil Wayne, Drake Donald Rollins, Linnell Gray Evans, 3-6 Mafia, Wiz Khalifa. Man, you did all this. Korn, Andre, Nikita, Trina, New Edition, Nicole Buffett, Black Star, Travis, Kevin Hart, Mike Epps. You have done so much, people don't even know that's why you are called the Richmond finest. In 2013, Brown moved back to Richmond, California. He has dedicated his life to the service of our neighbors and the need as a community volunteer and public servant. And that's what God has called us to do, everybody. We need to be servants. Oh my God. Brown has been a stellar advocate and passionate community activist and tireless service in the programs that promote family, self-sufficiency, and unity. But this is where I love right here when we get down into what you have been doing here. But before that, you're a proud father, a peer mentor, award-winning author. Your book, we're looking for the second book, man, when you're coming out with that. The results of his many years of volunteer service have achieved spectacular results in the past 7 years as a founder of the Soulful Sunday. All right, you have done so much. We got to park it right here, man. This right here. This is where you're known on Facebook, everybody, for the Soulful Sunday. Rodney, take it away. What was your inspiration behind Soulful Sunday Baseball? Tell us about that. Please tell us about that.
I'm glad you asked that question, Ms. Kim. Being a baseball player, as you know, I played baseball at Kennedy High School for 4 years of my lifespan when I was in high school. And so my love for baseball was just so vivid and wild that I've always had this liking. As you read, I was a baseball scout for the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, which they call the Tampa Bay Rays now, and the Atlanta Braves baseball team, professional baseball team. So being in those circles and then playing softball for such a long period of time, I play softball now. I just came back into the fold just about last November, but I had taken an 8-year hiatus. But I had played softball before that for 26 years. Wow. So I was sitting at home one day and I was on the couch channel surfing. And as I'm channel surfing, I'm watching the movie Soulful, you know, the wonderful movie that we all loved. This was years ago when it came out. They were replaying it on some channel. I don't remember the channel. And then God gave me this idea. He said, why don't you gather the people like they doing in Soul Food on Sunday, play softball and call it Soulful Softball Sunday. It had a cliche to it and it had a ring to it. So that was the drive behind it. Just being an avid softball player for numerous years, I wanted to bring that back into the fold because Richmond was known as a mecca for softball. We had world championship players who played before me. And I wanted to keep that tradition somewhat going. And Richmond softball had died down for numerous decades. So that was actually the gateway to starting something instrumental like that to bring it back into the fold. And there we have it, a la Soulful Softball Sunday.
When you had the first game, what was the feeling that overcame you when you got two teams together and it's like, oh my God, this is going to be a hit and people showed up? What was that feeling?
Well, let me just go back a little bit, Kim. I was actually told this was a dangerous proposition to do. Bringing people from different sectors of Richmond and I'm talking North Richmond, South Richmond, and Central Richmond, into an enclave, and then try to have a baseball game when these folk never really had reconciliation and atonement to atone for things in the past that they've done to each other. By doing that, I said, well, we don't know what this could come about unless we try it. In order for things to be successful, you have to be consistent with it. You have to do it over and over and over, and then make small changes if need be. So the first game was very interesting, Kim. We had about 50 people show up, and it was hot that day. It was really warm that day, and folk came out and they enjoyed themselves. And I said, let's do it again next week. We did it again the following week, and then the following week. So we had 8 continuous weeks for the summer of 2015. We did 8 installments, and I said, "Ooh, this is a lot of work. We're gonna have to surmise this down and do this annually." I didn't realize how much work it was in doing something of that magnitude, because I had never done it before. Of course, I had given concerts and promoted shows and things of that magnitude, but doing this took a little more into doing it, because you have different people who, again, that probably didn't like each other, who attended it. And so you have these folks begin to have these sidebar conversations of issues that they probably had 25 years ago. Some guy had wrecked into this guy's car, and some guy had shot at this guy's car. We don't even know if the car is still around, which is probably not, 25, 30 years ago. That was a long time. But anyway, those guys were able to hash out their issues. And I said, we're cooking with something. We're doing something very instrumental here. And it was invoked in psychology as well, because you didn't need to go to a therapy session inside a psychologist's office. We would have therapy there. Just organically, it would take place. And you would see people who would come out who hadn't seen each other, because there was a thing in Richmond called the Confused War, where these warring factions kind of like stabilized the community, and folk wouldn't go over to this side. Here's another thing that a lot of people probably didn't know, except for me. When we were younger, as you were growing up in Richmond, we went everywhere. And one of the places that we frequented was Nickel Park. Nickel Park was our Disneyland. So I said, why not bring people to an infancy place when they were young, play music from the 70s only when they didn't have bills, and just let them be this 8-year-old child again, and then reminisce upon what they used to do at that park while reconciling with other people. Ding, 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 ding. And that's what we did by default. And folk, again, don't know exactly what it is that they're involved in until they come to the park.
I love it. I love it. So when did you figure out, this is it? We're going to continue this thing, repetition, consistency, leadership. You had the model. It was like, hey, this works. People are showing up. So if people are showing up, you definitely have a product. If you don't have people, then you don't have sales. That is not a product. So when did you find out that, what, it's consistent, because you continue to do that? This is amazing. It's like, we're going to keep this going.
Well, Kim, great question. With anything, something new people like. Yes. People like new cars. They like new clothes. They like new adventures. They like new experiences. Yes. And one thing is I learned to give experiences and not events. Oh, yeah. See, anything that's eventful has a stop sign to it. Anything that's an experience continues. So if I can provide you with another ultimate experience, you'll come back. You just got back from Turks and Caicos. You had an awesome experience. I can bet you any money in the world you going back. Absolutely. Of course. So the whole ideology was to bring people back into the fold. Let me give you an experience that you've never had before, although the experience you had when you were a child is totally different than you experienced when you're an adult. Because as a child, you don't know as much as you know now. You don't have all these other things that's holding you back, all these reservations as adults do. Children can just jump into an enclave and have the best time of their life, and it could be 115 degrees and they don't care as long as they're having fun. So again, let me share this ideology with the people and then bring them into the fold and then do this thing again. You remember the Staple Singers had a song called Let's Do It Again? That's right. It was the same analogy. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. It's so amazing, because at what point do you just say, okay, there's a secret sauce here? Because what can you guarantee that same experience is going to lend to another great experience, which is going to lend to another great experience? There's a secret sauce that goes into that. What was that formula? Love. Love. So there's no written rules or unwritten rules at Soulful Softball Sunday. The environment dictates the actions of the human being. If I'm being loving and kind to you, well, guess what? It's like a virus, right? It just spreads to other people. So once the people start feeling the liquid love, they start feeling complacent with being there, despite what was said about the city of Richmond in previous years that had occurred. Folk wanted to be human beings once again. They wanted to love on each other once again. You said it earlier, you was like, Rodney, we 56 now, right? Our birthdays are 2 days apart. And you said we're 56 years old now. So when you take that simple element of maturation, of people getting older, folks are going to their glory. Folks are leaving here. So why can't we get together as Richmondites and enjoy ourselves, and then bring our children and then bring our grandchildren and let them see how we have fun? So later on in life, somebody will take the torch and they will carry on with Soulful Softball Sunday. That's the idea of it, moving forward of what the plans are for the future. So it becomes a staple in the community.
Well, I love the fact that, your education actually paved the Jordan River of that, with you being a mental health clinician and working with families as undeserved families in Richmond, California. So knowing the psychology behind that, and you actually making it an active point to execute that in what you were doing, you found a formula that worked, Rodney. You found a formula that works. And that is fantastic, because when we look at community, and so far we talked about, you didn't have any limits. You had resilience. You wanted to bring together atonement. You had consistency. You had small organic therapy that people didn't have to pay for sitting across a therapist. It was organic therapy just by coming one another and being able to communicate and to engage. And we need that in our communities, to be able to be engaged and to speak and communicate with love. You talk about liquid love and kindness, and we talked about community. It sounds like to me, Rodney, that those are some pillars to the process of leadership. So let's get down and dirty and let's talk about that. What are the process of leadership?
Great question, Kim. When you talk, and you mentioned this, and I was always taught the highest form of education is application. And just because a lot of people don't show. Showing them exactly what I knew, and then doing it from an organic perspective, those became pillars. Those are things that we said, love is one of them, respect is another, mankind is another pillar. So once we begin to develop these pillars, we begin to see how this thing could be. There's always a floor level, there's always a baseline, there's always a foundation of sorts that you have to have in order to have success in doing things like this. And I get it all the time, like, you must be like some Marley magician or something, right? How the heck do you do this? And I tell them, it's not me, it's God. I'm just a conduit of what God has instilled inside of me, and he lets it all happen through his glory. And so I always give God the glory. I'm always the person who says, it's not me. What you see is the God in me, but it's not me who's actually steering this boat. I'm not commandeering this ship at all. I'm just in a seat. And so it's maneuvering the way God wants it to go. So, like anything, God will bless it. He'll do whatever he do. He'll send work to help. He'll do everything that he'll want you to have if you're sincere in your work.
I love that. I love that. And it's amazing because leadership takes time. It's something that's just not birthed over time. It's something that it's engaged with experience. It's with knowledge. It's going through ups and downs, which you've had. You have different different changes in the world, which has contributed to a lot of your experience and your wisdom that you're having right now, but more importantly, your passion. So let's talk about that. See, great leaders have deep passion. And where do you inspire? Where does your passion come from? We know it comes from God. Where else do you kind of like lean into your passion and being a great leader? Because Rodney, you're a great leader. You're Richmond finest.
Well, thank you, Kim. I appreciate the accolades. There was a man by the name of Bert Owens. We talked earlier about me being a barber, which most people know me in Richmond as being a barber. I had a prolific career for 27 years. There was a man that poured into me by the name of Bert Owens. And my father had died when I was 18 years old. And so Mr. Owens offered me a job to cut hair at his barbershop. I didn't even have barber license, but he told me to go to barber college and, make sure that you get your barber license and you can come back and then you'll be a full-fledged barber. So I worked there part-time while I was going to school. And every day, Kim, when I would get out of school, I would go to the barbershop and cut hair. And he will sit me down and he gave me tillage. He nurtured me. He gave me fatherly advice that I didn't have. And he said this to me one day, Kim. He said, you owe so much to so many who was never given anything to you.
Oh.
And I didn't even know what that meant. You know, it went zoop, zoop, yeah, whatever, man.
Wow.
And as I began to get older, that stuck with me. It's like it's just nestled right here. It never went anywhere. So we go to me being a community advocate. Those were actually the planted seeds of me becoming a community advocate on behalf of Berth Owens at Owens Barbershop.
I love it. So let's get into that. I'm glad you mentioned that. And I'm sure that people that are listening on our podcast show visually and also listening, let's talk about community advocate. Define that. What exactly what is the role of a community advocate?
When you talk about the word community advocate or the moniker community advocate, and what does that mean? That means advocating on all fronts, whether it be social experiences, whether it be anything dealing with food insecurity, food deserts, whether it be folk who need mentorship, anything along those lines that someone may need help with, I'm there to provide that service. My whole ideology is to get people to understand that each one teach one to reach one. And we have to show folks and exemplify to folks what that looks like. So when you take up a moniker as community advocate, availability is crucial. My phone, this phone I got has never, ever been turned off. Never. It's on 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days out the year. Because if someone were to call right now, excuse me, Kim, I got to take this call. But I mean, I'm just jokingly saying that. But in retrospect, we don't know if it's life or death on the other end of that phone. There's always a situation that's occurring. There's always things because life happens. And so we have to be there as community advocates to serve our beloved community of Richmond, California.
I love it. What organization do you represent right now? Do you represent multiple organizations as a community advocate?
Well, my professional day job that I do, I work for YSB, Youth Service Bureau, Country Coast Youth Service Bureau in Richmond, and we serve undeserving families within the sector of our city. A lot of our consumers, again, are folk who need help in advocating certain things that they don't know how to go about doing certain things, whether it be legality or otherwise. We're there to stand in the gap and mitigate any circumstance that they're going through. So I've been fortunate enough to actually segue what I've been doing within the sector of our community and then allow it to be something of substance in terms of making a living of what I'm doing. So I've just been grateful, Kim. I didn't know what I was going to do after I retired from cutting hair. I kind of sat idle for a couple of years trying to figure it out. And I think those things happen when you retire young. You're like, well, what am I going to do now at such a young age? I don't know what my next steps that are in order that God wants me to do. So I sat patiently and I just said, Lord, just give me an assignment. Anything you want me to do, I'll do. I'm a willing participant and a willing servant. And God said, this is where I want you to be. So I worked in a whole lot of consortium of things. I worked for Playworks. I did mindfulness. I taught kids how to breathe, how to relax, how to calm down. I worked as a mentor in schools. I worked in 8 different schools within the city of Richmond, California. So I was actually planted in doing that particular work, which allowed me to do what I'm doing now based on familiarity, breeding content.
Wow, it is so, you have done so much. Your breadth of work is so deep, Rodney. When you look at overall your experience of where you've come from, where you are right now, and when we look at the community engagement, where's the gap? Right now, I think as we move forward in our experiences in our work life, especially coming through the pandemic and the post-pandemic, what we've all had to go through, and it has wrecked a lot of communities, and communities are picking themselves back up. And so you see it through a different lens because you're at a leadership role. So where do you see right now, where's the gap in our community to make our community stronger, better, more fulfilled? You see gentrification going on in a lot of different communities. Let's take Oakland for one. I'm from Oakland. We see that there a lot, largely. Richmond, some. But I mean, where do you see some of the gaps, the pockets right now in our community of Richmond that needs to be filled?
Well, there's several gaps, Kim. One is food insecurity. Another one is homelessness. And you talked about the post-COVID syndrome as we're dealing with allegedly now. I don't think we're out of the woods. Some people believe that we are. But when you look at the separation of the haves and the have-nots, you looked at folks who had access to great health care as opposed to those who didn't have access to health care, great health care. We see what this deadly virus has done. It's decimated our community. I mean, there was always within the sector of the school district that a lot of our children were 2 grades behind. Unfortunately, some of them now are maybe 3 or 4 grades behind when they were doing distant learning. Some of the kids didn't even go and partake in distant learning. So now that they're back in a classroom setting, it's like there has to be repetitiveness taught by the teacher. There has to be standards taught by the teacher. So the teacher's regulating pretty much all day during the course of a school day as opposed to teaching. So those sorts of things kind of set our children back behind the 8 ball. Not just our children, but of course our communities as well. When you look at Richmond, the community at large, it's suffering. It's been suffering for a lengthy period of time. I talked about the confused war from 2004 to 2014 that had taken, unfortunately, 435 lives in that 10-year span. That's a lot of lives that was taken away from us, and potential. You look at the great potential that these human beings probably had, and that's a lost situation. So when you look at a catastrophe such as COVID, and you look at folk who are still looking for their mouthpiece on the canvas, so to speak, and I say that when I think about boxing terms, people are in disarray. They don't know which way to go, and they don't have really resources to get to where they need to get back to. So that's been a serious epidemic within the sector of Richmond, California, as I speak. And of course, when you look at the school districts, I mean, when you really talk about the school district and where they're going, what road they're climbing, trying to get back into the glory days, it's a hard knock life at this moment.
Wow, that is so amazing. It is just really, really amazing. So I got to get to this point here too that we talked about, which is beautiful. I want to get to this. When you mention pivotal is replaced with we, even illness becomes wellness. Let's talk about that just for a moment.
So the whole ideology behind that is, in order for someone to become healthy, they have to be healed. So that's someone, when you say when I is replaced with we, instead of it being an individual thing, now it's incorporated. It's we. So I stands for illness, we stands for wellness. When I'm talking about wellness, I'm talking from every sector, whether it be health and wellness, whether it be financial, economic, whether it be anything concerning the whole realm of the human being. I has to be replaced with we.
So we become inclusive and not exclusive.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's where we really have to get to. And when we get to that place, that's when we can have a total community healing. And that's beautiful. And on that note, if you had a magic wand, and if you can just change it, or you can just make it be how fitting, how you just describe it, what are the top 3 things that you would change first, or that you would probably bring in to make the community more cohesive?
The first thing I would do is education. And what I mean by education is educating folk of where they come from, learning their historical background, learning their roots. And like I know a lot of our folk come from the South. We have gotten beyond the scope of what that looks like in terms of being incorporated with each other. And I think through time and decades of travesty that's taken place within the sector of our city, we've seen that decimate. We've seen that love just disappear. So definitely education would be one. Number 2 would be just love, just incorporating love and showing folk what love is, unadulterated love, not because I do something for you, you do something in return, or what we call the agape love, simplistically. And number three, of course, would be to get folk out of the locale, to let folks see different places. Like you talked about, I saw you in Hawaii, and every time I see you going on these vacations, I just smile, right? Because I know that DNA is inside of you, is inside of me. So a part of me went to Hawaii with you, a part of me went to Turks and Caicos with you. Case in point, my oldest daughter is always traveling, going somewhere, right? And when I see her and I see the pictures, and it makes me smile. Yes. Because our whole thing is, if these children are getting a chance to go see the world And we as adults are getting a chance to go see the world. We can learn other things. We can expand beyond our horizon. And I think a lot of people in Richmond are not afforded that opportunity to do things like that. So those are the three things. If I had a magic wand, I can just wave and it can just happen, expeditiously. I'd be a happy man.
I think that is so amazing. A couple of years ago, right before this whole shift of COVID, I was teaching my Look Good Feel Great program to middle school and high school students, and I kept encouraging them, please get out and travel. Travel is something where you can go out and you can see the world through a different lens, and it gives you a heightened perspective, education, knowledge. It actually heightens your passion. And I would love for more, especially our African American young people, to be able to get out and travel. So if something could be, put together for them to just like every summer to where they're traveling to Europe, or they're traveling to Africa, or they're traveling to a different continent, or traveling to the Caribbean, that would be wonderful. I would love to do something like that. So I really do understand when you talk about the education and really knowing, our roots. When I was teaching the kids in the Look Good Feel Great program, I would just go back in history and we would talk about things. The diet, where did the Yoruba diet come from? Where did some of these diets come from Africa over in here to where we are today, to the plant-based diets? Where did our roots come from? So it's good to know, history, and then the love and incorporating love, getting folks out and just loving, embracing one another. And one of the ways that you've been able to successfully do that is through fitness. And that's your Soulful Sunday Baseball. Is amazing to be able to do that. So Rodney, my hat goes off to you with that. Let's also add a little bit more leadership. So where do you see the gap when it comes to Black men in terms of community, in terms of that fellowship, the mentoringship, one-on-one? Where do you feel that you can fill that gap in being a mentor to other young Black African American males right now? Because that is a huge gap that needs to be filled.
Great question, Kim. And I'm glad you asked that question. Number one, we've been able to expand Soulful Softball Sunday to other cities: San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley, East Palo Alto, Vallejo, Fairfield. And we talk historically about folk from Richmond not really getting along with folk from Oakland. What we wanted to do, we wanted to dispel those theses, so to speak, right? And when you talk about younger people who are playing softball, that gives the elder statesman an opportunity to, by default, mentor the younger brothers that's on their respective teams. So there's a lot of things that actually happen that didn't happen because we planned it to happen like that. It just so happened to happen. And being at the fact that the majority of a lot of our young men don't come from households with fathers in them, that becomes a pandemic within its own right. We've been able to really hone these brothers and show these brothers different avenues as they are young men with children, fathers per se, and some of them are dealing with a lot of elements that other folk my age has dealt with. So what better teacher to teach somebody something as someone who has the experience and the knowledge of what that younger person is going through? A lot of times, people my age and your age, we wasn't afforded to have a mentor such as Mr. Owens at our disposal. Most folk didn't have that. So being able to just give that general information to young men to close that gap or remedy that gap is a wonderful thing to have. So with Soulful Softball Sunday, we've been able to do that again by default. So it's just been amazing. The whole thing is very interesting, Kim. When I look back at a lot of the components that we have, they're very, very interesting components, and it just happened out of thin blue sky. Like I don't have a long laundry list where we're gonna do this. No, it doesn't happen like that. It just happens organically. So I share a unique story with you, and this really happened. We had taken 56 Richmondites up to Lake Tahoe one time, and it was folk on that bus whose relatives may have lost their lives in the hands of other people who were on that bus. So what I said was, okay, adults on this side, children on this side. And adults can learn a lot from children if you're paying attention. Well, the children who didn't even know each other began having conversations. So if I'm riding on the bus with you for 4 hours, you and I are going to have some conversations. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but it's going to happen. So the adults, they took a little nap because we left at 5:25 a.m. and the adults kind of took a little nap, and we got to our destination. Before we got to our destination, we stopped off at the Safeway up there in Placerville, to get some zoom zooms and wham whams. Well, folk getting their coffee, so now they're beginning to wake up. Then the conversations ensue. Little did we know that the majority of the people on that bus were related to each other. Wow. Because Richmond is such a small place. The Queen calls it a little country bumpkin town, right? It's such a small place. Everybody knows everybody to some degree, but you don't know if that's your relative or not. So when you look at this whole picture, Kim, you see a lot of younger folk had killed relatives that they didn't even know existed. Wow. And that's one of the things where I wanted to bring that out. So when I got folks onto the summit, when you get to the mountain, now I can have some mindfulness with you and let you breathe. And then once you up there in that environment, you become so condensed. You become so just letting things go. So the whole thing is evoked in health and wellness. And those are some of the components that actually is fixated with Soulful Softball Sunday, and just allowing that mentoring piece just happen by nature.
I love the fact that you brought in mindfulness. Touch on that a little bit more for those people who might not be practicing that or know really what that is. What is mindfulness to you?
Well, mindfulness is to be there, is to be present at once. We don't think about the past, we don't think about the future. We stay right here in the moment where we are. And I think a lot of us are so futuristic in our lives that we worry so much about things that we necessarily can't control. But if we're here in the present moment, we can control that. And another one of the great aspects of it is the breathing techniques that I employ. A lot of folks are familiar now with emotional intelligence. They're beginning to do that. That's coming to the fold as of recent. But mindfulness has really carried me throughout my entire adulthood in understanding just different ramifications of what life has to bring us. So it's a good tool to practice. I do it almost every day.
I love it. And I think that's something that we can bring into teaching. I did it. I brought it into my after school programs. It's something we can bring into the workplace. It's something that we can bring into our businesses. It's something that we can bring into our personal environments as well, into our relationship spaces. We actually can bring mindfulness in everywhere. And so it's amazing and it's wonderful when you can engage in that and you can actually practice that and share really what that modality is great. So Rodney, oh my God. So this is so juicy. It's a lot of information. We might have to do a part 2, but I do want to end with this leadership because I think it's really important. We need to have leadership in the family when it comes to a man being a leader over his home, a king over with a queen. And we also have to have leadership when it comes to, sharing with our young boys that are lacking fathers. So my question to you moving forward, what do you have to say to other men, Black men, white men, all men, on how we can be better leaders in our homes? Share 3 things. And then I also want you to speak to how we as men, well, not me, but men, can also be a little bit more, giving more of their time to maybe help some young men that might not have fathers in their homes, on how they can contribute and lend a little bit more time in the community.
Well, I'll answer the latter part first. When we talk about having more time or consolidating more time, I think if one were to have some type of program where he can teach folk how to understand what it is to be a man within the structure and confines of being a man, those are some things that can help greatly within the sector of our community. Maybe some mentorship program or some leadership program that can be instituted. Those are one of the things that can definitely help. When you look at a lot of young men who are without fathers, or a lot of young men who don't have a male within his life, you begin to see a lot of problems start to happen. And then those are things that kind of erode and then they turn into something different. And I think just allowing that plausibility to happen, maybe a life coach or something of that magnitude, that can kind of stem a lot of the issues that what we're dealing with today, because a lot of folk don't like to talk about things. And once we start holding it in within, then it becomes so problematic and it just exacerbates elsewhere. So those are some of the things that I think that could definitely curtail those issues at hand. 3 things that I think that a lot of men deal with, and as a man, I can tell you from experience, a lot of us are shy, a lot of us are guilty, and a lot of us are just plain resilient about talking about different things because we don't want to be judged. And I think the judgmental piece is what really holds a lot of men back from opening up to to whether it's a psychiatrist or a psychologist, whatever. And it's a trust factor. Nobody wants to be frowned upon for their shortcomings. And that's some of the things that I think that where the pride comes in with us as men, that we don't want to let folk know. And if you ask a man, how you doing, bro? I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. No, you're not. No, you're not. You know, nobody wants to say, well, look, man, I got a grocery list of problems. Let me tell you about it.
You got that right. They really don't. They really don't.
I mean, nobody does that. So the I'm doing fine part is a fallacy, right? It's really a fallacy. When you got all these things going on inside your life and you're trying to juggle of this sort, it becomes problematic later on because you don't have the tools or the knowledge to even deal with a lot of the issues that we're dealing with. So we have to come back into the fold, Kim. We definitely, as elder statesmen within the sector of our community, have to come back and nurture. That's what it's all about. I talked earlier about healing, like this healing mechanism, and somebody has to get healthy. You remember when we were children and we would stay home from school, and after the third day, your mom was like, wait a minute, hold on a second. I'm gonna stay home and make you some chicken noodle soup with a soda on the side because you got to get back to school. Because you wasn't gonna do it yourself. You know, you was gonna play that thing out for 5-6 days as long as you could. So once mama put that chicken noodle soup in you, you was on your way back to school. So that's what I'm saying. Somebody within the sector of the community has to become healthy in order to have a healing elixir for the other folk that's there. And then the saga continues, and then you heal someone else and heal someone else and heal someone else. So those are entities that has to be employed in order for Richmond, California, and cities around, surrounding cities and other places. If you seek to become healthy, those are mechanisms that has to be put in place.
I think that's beautiful because that's what we call from the I to the we, and that's called wellness. So the 5 pillars of building community, as you mentioned, is have a common goal, sense of belonging, which you talked about, and what you are doing in contributing to building a vibrant community, easy connection, and you actually use Softball Sunday as bridging the gap of that connection in learning and valuing and engaging. And those are some major pillars that needs to be, needed, fostered, and nurtured in any and every community. And we see that you're doing that. So hands off to you, Rodney, for doing that. I think it was beautiful.
Thank you.
So I'd like to just leave here with this beautiful podcast is to share with the world that's listening. How can someone get in contact with you, Mr. Rodney, and what you got coming down the pike? Do you have a mentorship that you like to share with, or maybe some coaching that you like to offer? Because I think a lot of Black men might be saying, hey, I want to reach out to you. I want to, be in connection with this brother. How might they do that?
Very simplistically, you can reach me at alamohawaii@yahoo.com. Send me an email, or you can find me on Facebook at Rodney Alamo Brown. You can find me in the daytime with a flashlight if you're seeking to find me. But anyway, I would love to start something of that magnitude, Kim, in terms of reaching back and doing some coaching per se, just giving some great advice to individuals who are in dire need of having it. So that'll be another way that I can get back to our extended communities.
I love it. So at the end of this show, I'm going to leave it in the show notes on how you can get in contact with Rodney. And he also has a complimentary coaching session that you can sign up and to mentor and to coach with him. And Rodney, thank you so much for coming up with that. I think that's going to be amazing because I'm sure that you got people that might just want to reach out and have a conversation with you, and we can see what comes after that. So thank you for even offering that, to the podcast show today. But I'd like to say, or to ask you, what is your next big move that you would like to accomplish?
Well, I've always spoken about expansion. I've always talking about having bandwidth with Soulful Softball Sunday. And one thing about it is, of course, being local is a wonderful thing. But what this is mobile. Soulful Softball Sunday is a mobile unit. You can pick it up and take it anywhere. Mm-hmm. So the thought process was to take it to the Caribbean, take it to the beautiful Curacao. Yeah. So if we can do it here in Richmond, which is a hard place to do it, it's a proving ground. It's been happening for 7 years. Then we can take this abroad and do it anywhere in the world per se. So if we take it to Curacao, we can definitely take it to every other Caribbean island that plays baseball or softball within that region.
I love it. And you've been doing this for 7 years. 7 years.
Yes.
That is absolutely incredible. Talking about consistency. Incredible. I like to always end with some fun questions. So, Rodney, what is your favorite color?
Great question, Kim. I have a couple favorite colors, and some people are probably gonna laugh at this, but salmon is my favorite color.
Oh, he gonna say you didn't say pink or mauve. You said salmon. I love
Salmon.
that. What does that represent? I
Well, when you know when you go back, well, let me go back, Kim. If you ever get a chance to go to Curacao, you see the colors of the buildings are very vibrant. And in most Curacao, I mean, most Caribbean countries, they're very vibrant. Something about when I put salmon on, it brings upon a sense of peace
like,
with me and tranquility. And I also like aqua, blue,
wow.
because of the water, the clarity of the water, the cleanliness of the water, right? So those are two of my favorite colors that I love to wear.
Is that because you was in Hawaii?
No, no, no. It's just I've always liked those colors.
I love it. Did you ever think that you would leave Hawaii? I mean, did you ever think that that's where you would stay all the time? That when you went out there, that really was going to be your home, and you know.
That thought process did cross through my mind numerous times, but it was time to come back to California. I'll be candid and honest with you. I was a recovering alcoholic, so when I went to Hawaii, that was part of my therapy of getting healed. And so spending exactly 3,065 days in Hawaii, 10 years, 3,650 days in Hawaii, exactly. That was one of the things that I wanted to do and I needed to do so that I can come back here to Richmond, California and help people in many ways.
Man, that is just amazing. Recovering alcoholic and you resilient and you bounce back and look at you. See, that pillars of a leader, man. Pillars of leadership. Look at you. That is amazing. Just amazing.
Thank you. I mean, all glory goes to God. Without God, I wouldn't have been able to do what I've done. And when you look back at when I look at back at my life, I think about it all the time. Only God, right? They use that phrase, but the phrase is not a cliche. It's real. Only God. So without God, we can't do any of this. And I wouldn't be no me without He.
Love it. I love it. And it is amazing. Sometimes you never, despite where you come from. I always tell people, despite not small beginnings and where you come from, because you never know when you may have to go back and cross that bridge. So we're back. We're so glad, Rodney, that you're back in Richmond. My grandmother is still in Richmond. I think she's one of the oldest representatives. I can't get off the show without giving her glory. Flora Evans, 104 years old, residents in Richmond, California.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
her birthday was just in August, and the town and city have given her so much love. Richmond finest, Rodney. Oh my God, I am so excited again for you saying yes to be my guest. We're going to be looking at you to see what's coming up next. Your book is coming out, your mentorship. Any last words or suggestions or points that you would like to share before we close out the show?
Yes, indeed. I'm glad you spoke of Miss Flora Evans, one of the pillars of and matriarchs of our beautiful city of Richmond, California. We honored our lovely Empress a few years ago, and she got
You did. Thank
we
you.
did. We did. I mean, we had to, right? It's very interesting, Kim, because this past Soulful Softball Sunday, we honored our youngest recipient, who was 10 years old, 11 years old. This young lady takes her own savings from her allowance and feed our homeless population. What better person who's in position to do something like that than a young lady such as her? The youngest ever, and then Miss Flora Evans was the oldest person. So when you look at the bookends, right, of what that looks like when we're building community and we're building it outward, we bring all these folks, and we've honored 67 people since the inception of Soulful Softball Sunday. Miss Minnie Lou Nichols was a recipient, who was the first Black woman to own a business in Richmond, California. We honored her family. Her family members came out and they received the award. And there's a lot of folk that we go back into the archives and think about, people who came, like our grandparents came from the dirty South, the Royal South. I think you're folks from Arkansas, if I'm not mistaken, but yes. I can go on and talk about how our infancy stages began. And we want folks, again, to know the historical ramifications of what our beautiful city has to hold. And that was one of the purpose of Soulful Softball Sunday, is to let folk know we just more than what the caption says on KTVU. Yeah, we're more than that. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing, Miss Kim. It's definitely a beautiful thing. And thanks to you and people like you who are giving us the floor and the platform to speak about it, I really appreciate you.
Oh no, we appreciate you. And we thank God for, for that voice. What has been one of your favorite accomplishments when you look back your whole life so far up to this point? What has been your most profound accomplishments? I gotta say this. We gotta end on this note. We started high, we're gonna end up higher. Come on now.
Having children. And I'll tell you why. My oldest daughter is the president of the Berkeley Unified School District at the age of 30 years old. She's the youngest school board president in the history of America.
Oh my God. What? Repeat that.
She's the youngest school board president in the history of America.
Amazing.
So she's what I call the modern day Fannie Lou Hamer. She's my Shirley Chisholm. And when you look at milestones like that, no matter what she does for the rest of her life, she's etched in the books as a trailblazer. And so that makes me real proud as a father. My youngest daughter plays 6 different instruments. She sings, she can sing in Hebrew, very talented, probably the most talented human being I've ever been around. The Lord has really blessed me with 2 beautiful children, and just being around them brings out the joy inside of me. I'm so really proud of both of them and where they've come from in such a short period of time, making headway, making their daddy proud. So we want to keep this Brown tradition and this Brown name flourishing. And again, those 2 probably will be the predecessors for successors for Soulful Softball Sunday.
I love it. I love it. And one last thing I want you to share. I think you got some great news to share. You said that you are a sports writer or something. Something that you starting with UC Berkeley or something like that today that you're going to be doing. You were mentioning.
Yeah. So I started in 2019. I was writing for 247 Sports, which is owned by CBS Sports Digital Media. I write stories about the University of California football team. And so I've been reinstated to do that, and I'm happy about the reinstatement and doing that. So, like I told you earlier, we got 5 jobs, man. Jamaica.
I love it. Oh my God, this has been wonderful. I just wanted to just share some beautiful nuggets on my brother. We share our birthdays are 2 days apart, both Richmond finest, Kennedy Eagles alumni. I have been watching this man for decades, and he's just been doing some amazing things. Rodney, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. And we still got a lot more ahead to see about what you're about to do. So yes, you trailblazing, loving the community, and being who you are, and allowing God to use you. And thank you so much, Rodney, for being a guest on my show.
Well, thank you so much, sister. And keep up the beautiful work yourself. I love everything that you're doing. Is again, like I say, when I see you traveling the world and doing your thing, it just makes me feel proud to say, hey, that's a Richmondite. That's a fellow Kennedy Eagle out there doing her thing. So may God continue to keep you in this perfect peace and allow you to continue upon the lines of what you've been doing, sister.
Well, I definitely receive that. And you all, thank you very much for watching the podcast show. This is Kim Evans, the host of Inspired Conversations. And if you want more information with me, you can just give me a call. There's 3 ways how you can get in contact with me. 1, we can have a complimentary discovery call, which I offer that to all of my guests or anyone here on the podcast show. If you're looking for some business coaching, I do offer one-on-one coaching, and also my new 12-month program, which is called The Unstoppable. Thank you very much for watching, you guys, and God bless you all to the podcast show, Inspired Conversation. And thank you again, my guest, Rodney. God bless you.
Thank you, sister.
All right.